Let's go, Joe. Hello and welcome to the Thursday Thriving Talks, which is not an easy thing to say, actually. I'm Sue Cooper. I'm co-director of Feast for the Soul. And these are just half an hour to 40-minute extras where we bring to life people who are working in community, who are active, who are helping us to co-create compassionate communities and to thrive and to bring their very own essence into being, into the feast, to help us. We have our practices, we have our meditation practices, but I sense this is the next stage, which is asking those soul questions. You know, who am I? What's my purpose? How can I serve? And the deeper ones that enable us to really step up, rise up and thrive. So tonight, I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce Sindy Kaur. Sindy is a local lady. She lives in my home city. We're friends and we're working on a project together, which is about bringing people into talking circles, into community with a sense of belonging, and to really deeply sense into our own individual value, what makes us thrive, what makes us tick. So Sindy is a trends translator who looks at mega and micro trends, then helps to translate them into tangible products, services, and ideas tailored to the people she's working with. And Sindy's varied background has given her such a broad experience and understanding of people from all walks of life. Sindy used to hold monthly meetings, huge meetings in our city centre called the Yes Group. And that's where I think we first met. As a chartered marketeer, she spends over a decade in the corporate world of beauty and retail. Sindy is a qualified coach and she runs a coaching program called Your Power Behind the Mask. She also works with the charity The Princess. She worked actually with the charity The Princess Trust, engaging with hard to reach communities and helping individuals to gain hope and create a better way forward for themselves. I know Sindy's passion is actually football and nature, English football and nature. that sense very grounded. So Sindy, welcome. Is there anything you'd like to add at this stage? Because we're going to move into conversation. Just say hi before we move in.
Thank you so much for actually inviting me here. And I can see why you wanted this to tag on to Michael's meditation, because it's so relevant. I think, we give our power away. We lose touch with who we really are because we're trying to fit into what other people want. And I think sometimes, I think now is the time for us to step back into who we are, really get to know what's important to us, because there's big change that's needed in the world and we've all got a part to play.
Yes, we have, each one of us. So we had a chat, a pre-chat, about what we were going to discuss today. And you tell me a story that really resonated, and it was about a diamond. So before we begin, would you share that story with us and just set the scene?
So this story has come from a book called The Journey by Brandon Bays. And I'm paraphrasing and adding a little bit of my own stuff to it. But the essence is that she says we come into this world as pure shining diamonds of potential. And as we go through life, it throws muck at us. So we're 2 years old and we're told, you're naughty, you're bad, sit on the naughty step. And then we go to school and we get bullied. And then we have our first girlfriend or boyfriend in our teenage years. And they finish with us and say, you're fat and you're ugly and nobody will ever love you. And so we go through life with more and more of this, I was going to say, muck thrown at us. And we gather so much of it that it actually hides that diamond. And so we grow up and we get to adulthood and we get this big pot of shiny varnish and we slap it over ourselves and we present that to the world as if that's who we are. but we're scared of letting anybody get too close because we know that behind that veneer is all this muck. And then what she says is if we're really lucky, life will come and give us such a hard knock that it actually cracks that veneer open and it reveals the muck. And then it's our job to start clearing through that. So whether we do it through art, through dance, through therapy, through coaching, however we do it, it's about clearing out all that rubbish that's been piled onto us until we get to a stage where we can just crack that veneer open and then step back into the world as that pure, shining diamond of potential we always were.
There's so many elements in there that ring true, and I can see a few people on the call nodding their head. So in your work, you look at trends, don't you? Can you share what you see around values and how they're driving positive change in the world?
Yeah. So my background is in the corporate world in beauty and marketing, and also trends, and it's something I still do alongside the coaching. And look at three levels of trends. So you've got the mega trends, which are the big societal shifts that are going on. You've got the macro trends, which are looking at things like what's happening politically, what's happening socially, economically, what's happening in people's lives. And then the micro trends is where we then say, okay, what does this mean for products and services that are tailored to your customer? And so I just want to share some of the mega trends that I'm noticing at the moment. So one is fast tech. So this is that technology is really accelerating quite quickly. And that's things like AI, it's things like Web3, cryptocurrency. And there's a real opportunity there right at the beginning to really make sure that when we develop it, it's values-based. So that's the first one, fast tech. The second one is about environmental sustainability. So this is things like circular economy, climate change. And then the third one, which I think is the most relevant here, is what I call people power. And this is people are starting to step back into their purpose, their values, and back into community. So in terms of purpose, people are stepping into a higher consciousness and realizing actually we're part of something much bigger than just ourselves. In terms of values, we're looking at things like diversity, equity, inclusivity. Instead of having hierarchy and division and control, how can we work together to make this world better for all of us? And then reclaiming power, which is around community. How can we create communities? How can we co-create the future that we want? And how can we collaborate with the right people to make that change? So that's I guess that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and it's happening. We know it's happening, don't we? We don't necessarily hear a lot about it because the main media has a different agenda. But knowing that there are all over the world, there are people gathering. We see it. We actually do see it on the news, don't we? But to sit quietly in a circle, to be deeply heard and listened to, and have that sense of belonging, as Michael was talking about, is incredibly powerful. So when you're talking about values, what actually do you mean? Can we just pin it down so that we've got that real sense?
So we hear about values all the time. You hear about company values, social values, family values, and they're really group values that sometimes other people have come up with that we need to conform to if we want to be part of that group, if we want to be accepted. But as individuals, we're actually born here with our own innate, I guess I'd call them soul values, that really give us what we need to do what we're here for. And it's not about who we want to be or who we think we should be, but who we actually are in our innate, soul being. And when we get to know our own values, it's almost like having a compass. It's like having a roadmap that shows us how we can live and work authentically in line with what we're here to do and what's going to make us happy. Because when we're aligned with our values, then we're happy and we're in flow and things seem easy. And when we're not aligned with them or that those values are being dishonored, that's where we feel anger, we feel stress, we feel apathy, we feel depression. And I think sometimes our personal values can actually conflict with our cultural values or with societal values. And we're so conditioned to fit in that sometimes we actually lose sense of who we are. And that can feel as leaving judged. It can feel as let us, make us feel not good enough. And I think, one of the things in coaching that we talk about is the so-called ladder of success. We spend our lives clambering, striving to get to the top of this ladder, ticking all the boxes, the house, the car, the relationship, only to get to the top of it and realize that actually that ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. And it wasn't our top boxes that were being ticked. It was other people's. And I think, um, quite often our parents want to keep us safe. And so we might say, I want to be creative, I want to be a singer, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be, whatever. But in order to keep us safe, our parents or our guardians will guide us to go down a path which is safe, which is secure. And as a result, like I'm saying, we're taking their boxes instead of ours. So we end up getting to the end of our life feeling empty, feeling exhausted. And so I always say to people, if you're feeling like that, have a look. Are you on the right ladder, or do you need to jump across, even if it's a rung or two down? Because if you're going to be striving for your whole life to get up this ladder, make sure it's taking you somewhere that you want to go.
Yes, that it is the right ladder. It's I think that was very much what happened at my generation. The propel up the professional ladder or propel wherever. I am now, and I'd love to talk more about this, sensing into the generation now who are entering the workplace, are entering a workplace that I don't understand what these jobs are, these digital jobs. And so I think it becomes even more difficult, doesn't it, for parents to be able to guide the young people starting on work, because they don't necessarily understand what is occurring in terms of the digital trends that the young people are moving into the world of work. So looking at examples of personal values,
Mm.
would you be able to?
Yeah. I think the easiest way to do it is to take an example of two people.
Okay.
So let's say we've got Dorothy and Angus. Dorothy's values are very much around safety and structure and predictability and planning and control. That's what she needs in her life to feel safe. Whereas Angus's are more around fun and creativity and adventure and spontaneity. So if you imagine they went out to buy a car together, can you imagine the arguments that would happen? Because Dorothy would be looking at, let's research this, let's compare the prices, let's have a look at the reviews. And Angus would be saying, is it fun to drive? Oh, don't bore me with all the boring stuff. And so, that's a really, really simple way of saying that, each of us has very different values and there's no right or wrong values. And quite often when we're in an argument with somebody, it's not actually an argument with that person. It's a clash of values. And once we realize that, we can kind of step out the emotion and look for compromise. Um, and in reality, we have a mix of both Angus and Dorothy's values, along with things like honesty, respect, integrity. And when we're working and living in alignment with those values, things feel natural, things feel good. But when we're not, then that's when the problems occur.
And how do you, within your work, the power behind the mask, how do you tease those values out of people? I am reasonably clear, well, very clear, because I've done values with you, of my values. And what I've found is it's become the most incredible compass. You've mentioned that, haven't you? It's like, am I in alignment? Because I know that, one of my main values is freedom. And am I so as I'm going off kilter, I know that, okay, this is a value that is now out of alignment. So moving into a bigger discussion about this, what disconnects us? What disconnects us from our values?
I think can I just say one little thing, just pick up on what we said there. You know, there's this thing about not being right or wrong.
Yeah.
If I give an example, some of my values are around creativity, spontaneity, adventure, and my sisters are around control, predictability. And so she's always saying, "How can you be self-employed? How can you not know from one month to another how what sort of paycheck is coming in?" And she's trying to get me to find a proper job. And then I'll say to her, "But you're wasting your life just sitting behind a desk. How can you not be out there? How can you not want a bit more excitement?" And she'll say, "Well, because I need to plan my holidays." And I think, "Oh, like, but I'll just do it on the spur of the moment." So there's no right or wrong values, and it's really about sort of like understanding that. But in terms of what was your question? What disconnects us from our values?
Yes.
I think one of the biggies is the pressure of other people's expectations, which we've already spoken about. It's things like trying to conform and gain approval. Um, it's about maybe being immersed too much in the materialistic world. And there's nothing wrong with going through the materialistic, going for the materialistic stuff. But if you sell your soul in the process, then are you really going to be happy at the end? So it's a case of saying, yeah, this is what I want. I'm all about, dream big, go for what you want. But it's about how you get there. If you're doing it in alignment with your values, you're much likely to be happier when you actually get there. And, if you think about babies are born into this world knowing what their values are. And if they want something, they demand it. And if they don't get it, they scream. But what we're taught is it's not really socially acceptable to scream and to demand what you want. Be good. People won't like you. You've got to fit in, you've got to conform. And what we learn then is that we have actually got to start to give our power away in order to get approval, to get our needs met. So eat your dinner or you can't have pudding. Clean your room or you can't go out to play. And drip by drip, we give that power away. What nobody tells us is that when we get to, say, teenage years, we can start to take some of that power back because we're much more self-sufficient. But because nobody tells us that, we go on and we take this into adulthood. So into relationships, we give our power away in relationships because we want to be liked. We give our power away to our boss because we want to get promoted. We want our pay rises. And in the process of pleasing others, we forget about pleasing ourselves and having our own boundaries. And that's one of the biggest things that actually causes that disconnect.
We get lost, don't we?
Yeah.
It's tough because we're educated. We want to please others. It seems to not everybody wants to do that. I have to be very careful here, but it feels comfortable and easy when you're pleasing others. But when you start to develop, and this is what I love so much about these practices that we do in Feast and these conversations is to start to question, to start to become more aware of what serves you and what doesn't, and to have that. It's as if you rise in confidence. You move into a knowing that this will serve me, and to do it from love. It's not saying, I mean, obviously sometimes there's conflict. If I could just give a little example of this in my own life, is that I was working in professional football, which in the administration department, but I knew that wasn't serving me, and I wanted to become a nurse because I'd seen a nurse, so I thought, oh, that looks a nice job. And I used to like watching Dr. Kildare on telly, and everybody said, you can't be a nurse. You can't be a nurse. You're far too noisy. And you can't do it because of, you know, your personality and this, that, and the other. And of course, there's something when it feels right, no matter how people are saying you can't do it. Sometimes there's that will to say, well, I'm going to do it anyway, and you're making me more determined. But there's that deep knowing when we're called to do something, aren't we? And when our values are in alignment and we sense into that depth of us, as you talked about, that shining diamond. So I just give gratitude for the people who said that I couldn't do that, because that will and determination and those values went, oh yes, I can, and I will. But you need to generate the courage, don't you?
Can I just tell a very quick story about that? When I was, I do believe that we come in knowing or having a sense of what we're here to do. And when I was about 4, people used to say to me, Cindy, when you're older, what do you want to be? And I'd say, I want to be a butterfly. People would laugh at me.
Yeah.
So when I was about 6 and people said, Cindy, what do you want to be when you grow up? I thought, if I say a butterfly, they're going to laugh. So I said, I want to be a fire engine. And they still laughed. And so I became a chartered marketeer instead. Anyway, skip forward a few years. I had quite a big burnout in the corporate world, which wasn't to do with workload, it was to do with conflicting values. And when I left, one of the things I really wanted to do was I'd always wanted to become a makeup artist. And I thought, what is it about a makeup artist that I really, really, well, I thought actually back to what was it about a butterfly that really attracted me? And it was the colors, the creativity, it was the flitting around from one thing to another. And I realized that actually that's what I was doing as a makeup artist. And when I thought back to the fire engine, it was like, what is it about the fire engine that really attracted me? And it was about going around going, Mima, Mima, and waking people up to problems and then helping them to solve them, which is exactly what I was doing as a life coach. Now, I was a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. I had no idea what a makeup artist or a life coach was, but somewhere inside there was a clue that this is what you're here to do. And obviously there's a whole other story behind it. But essentially what I always say is never step on a child's dream, because that holds clues to what they're here to do. And the vehicle of the makeup artist, the life coach, the trends translator, all of that is actually just giving me the tools to do what I'm here to do. You know, what I say to clients is we come into this world with a blank crown on our heads. And our job is to go through life, meeting people, having experiences. And out of those experiences, whether they're positive or negative, it's about taking the jewels of wisdom and letting the rest of it go and putting those jewels of wisdom in our crown. And sometimes, we don't understand why we meet certain people, why we go down certain routes. But eventually we come to a place in our life where we realize that we've got enough wisdom in our crown and enough contact and enough experience to take us to do what we were actually here to do.
I just see you as a butterfly in a fire engine. Beautiful, beautiful story, and true, isn't it? And it's as if you knew at a very early age. But then we do. I think
A
we
bit
do.
like yourself, I was told, no,
Yeah.
you can't do that.
Yeah.
So you conform.
Yes. But eventually it finds you. Yeah. How do we get back in touch? Say our values are, what's actually going on in the world at the moment is exceptionally difficult for us all, and for those very close to conflict, be it world conflict, oh goodness, and conflict within the workplace, conflict within home, that being ill at ease, and just on day to day, something that triggers you. How do we get back in touch with it?
So one of the things that I do is try and step out the emotion and not feed the fear.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, if you can't, you can't always go into joy, but go into neutral. In terms of getting back in touch with your values and what's important, I think it's about going inside. It's about detaching um, from the computer, from the electronics, from social media, getting out into nature, journaling, meditating, and if you want to go deeper, work with a coach or a therapist, or depending on where you're going. So, for example, with the Your Power Behind the Mask program, that I say that's all about coming back home to yourself. And in there, we do quite a deep dive into values, because when you get to know, like, and trust yourself at a really deep level, you stop minding about what other people think. And that gives you a real sense of freedom to be able to get out there and step into your brilliance. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to take the learnings. It's okay to try new things.
Yes, yes. I've loved this discussion. Would you just share some of the values that in your work that people express from their hearts to you?
Absolutely. And but I mentioned I work with the Princess Trust, and some of the people that worked with, some people had been maybe in prison, or they'd been in gangs, or they'd been on the streets, and they're trying to put their life to right by setting up a business because nobody would employ them. On the other hand, we had the mentors who are potentially from a completely different side of life, multimillionaires, philanthropists who wanted to mentor these people. So I'd be sitting in a room with people with completely different backgrounds. And what I realized is that ultimately, it doesn't matter what the outer packaging looks like. People they want to be acknowledged, they want to be respected, they want to contribute something back, they want to look after their loved ones. And so there are some values that I think we've got which are common, and then the other add-on ones which so you'll have the fun, the spontaneity, you'll have the control, and actually what we need is all of them working together. So the project that we're working on, Sue, is we're very much up in the air thinkers, and we can go off into all these dreamlands, and then we've got somebody else on the team who is actually helping just to ground us a little bit. So I think, when we're looking at changing the world, or even at work, going into projects, it's very much of saying it's not about right and wrong values and people doing everything the same way. It's about getting a good mix so we work well together and respect each other in order to drive that change forward.
Sindy, that's been such a rich conversation. I hope people who are listening to this now and people who are watching it find within themselves the ability to start to really bring their whole attention to what matters to them in their life. So when I sat before you or with you and to look at values, would you just explain a little bit about that process, what that really looks like?
Yeah. So the purpose of getting values is for really you getting to know and like and trust yourself at a deep level. And so it's a simple conversation, but it's not always easy. And it's just where I ask a few questions, and you instinctively answer them from your soul. And some of the questions are things like, what do you do for fun? What makes you laugh? When's the last time you had a good belly laugh? And if people say, I can't remember, then you know that they've disconnected from them. But it's basically just asking a series of questions, and I'm trained to listen to what you're saying, to what you're not saying, explore that a little bit deeper. And at the end of it, I come up with a sheet of 10 values, which are tailored specifically to you, that you can then use almost as a signpost or a stake in the ground to say, when I make this decision, whether it's in work, whether it's in career, whether it's in relationships, if I do this, if this is this going to take me towards my values or away from them? And it's a really, like you say, Sue, a really simple way of not only making decisions, but also understanding why things happened to you, why you responded like that, who you gave your power away to, that actually held you back, and also how you can start reclaiming that. So I was saying before that why would you give your power away to somebody that you don't respect? And when you actually realize that this is somebody who's got completely different values, you can start creating boundaries. You can start looking at your belief system. You can start looking at self-esteem, and then it goes on to the rest of the process.
Thank you, Sindy. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
I really look forward to continuing to work with you. You're gifting your time in this community project that we're doing together, bringing people into, not bringing, inviting people into circle to be deeply listened to and heard, and share what's actually in their hearts for building community, looking at quality of life, looking at health, looking at happiness, looking at engagement, people engagement in community, and all of this is from basic values that the group co-create, and that power, we can do so much on our own, but when we come together with the same intention of love and appreciation, and whatever the particular values that come up within that conversation, creates that coherence, creates that harmony for creativity to take place. So thank you so much indeed. So if we could stop the record.